Robert Reich at his website has an interesting piece that I got to share with you. He was Clinton's Secretary of Labor. You'll remember he's a professor at where? I don't know. Someplace. He's a professor of what? I don't know. I just like everything about Robert Reich, including his look. I mean, he looks a bit like a hobbit, doesn't he? And you know what the hobbits did to the crazy fucker that lived in the volcano. Who was that? Voldemort? No, that was a different story, Mike. Anyway, I like Reich because he reminds me of a hobbit who is determined to lay low the evil forces in America. So when it comes to Robert Reich and his website, his Facebook page, I'll usually just quote it outright. Here's what he wrote yesterday. The sudden lurch, this is the preamble, sudden lurch from Trump to Biden is generating vertigo all over Washington, including the so-called fourth branch of government, CEOs and their army of lobbyists. Boy, isn't that the truth, huh? The fourth branch of government. Anyway, this is what Robert writes. CEOs are being hailed and hailing themselves as guardians of democracy. That's after saying they will no longer donate to the 147 Republican members of Congress who objected to the certification of Biden electors on the basis of Trump's lies about widespread voter fraud. Give me a break. That's Reich talking, not me. Give me a break. For years, big corporations have been assaulting democracy with big money, drowning out the voices and needs of ordinary Americans, and fueling much of the anger and cynicism that opened the door to Trump in the first place. Their assault hasn't been as violent as the pro-Trump mob who stormed the Capitol, and it's entirely legal. But it's arguably more damaging over the long term. A study published a few years ago by two of America's most respected political scientists, Princeton professor Martin Gilens and Benjamin Page of Northwestern, concluded that the preferences of the average American, quote, have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy, end quote. Lawmakers respond almost exclusively to the moneyed interests, those with the most lobbying prowess and deepest pockets to bankroll their campaigns. Let me digress. That's not a surprise, is it, Truth Seeker? Huh? That's not a surprise at all. What's the old saying? Them that has gets. Back to Reich. So now, in the wake of Trump's calamitous exit and Biden's ascension, we're to believe CEOs care about democracy? As Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, put it, quote, no one thought they were giving money to people who supported sedition, end quote. Yet Jamie Dimon has been a leader of a more insidious form of sedition. He piloted the corporate lobbying campaign for the Trump tax cut, deploying a vast war chest of corporate donations. And for more than a decade, Jamie Dimon has driven Wall Street's charge against stricter bank regulation, opening bipartisan doors in the Capitol with general gifts from Wall Street. Oh, and Jamie Dimon calls himself a Democrat. When Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg shut Trump's Facebook account, Zuckerberg declared, quote, you just can't have a functioning democracy without a peaceful transition of power, end quote. But where was Zuckerberg's concern for a functioning democracy when he amplified Trump's bigotry and lies for over 4 years? After taking down Trump's Twitter account, Jack Dorsey expressed discomfort about, quote, the power an individual or corporation has over a part of the global public conversation, end quote. Spare me. Dorsey has fought all attempts to limit Twitter's power over the global conversation. He shuttered Trump only after Democrats secured the presidency and control of the Senate. Jack Dorsey, of course, being the CEO of Twitter. Look, Reich writes, I'm glad CEOs are penalizing the 147 Republican seditionists and that big tech is starting to regulate social media content. But don't confuse the avowed concerns of these CEOs about democracy with democracy itself. They aren't answerable to democracy. At most, they're answerable to big shareholders and institutional investors who don't give a fig as long as profits keep rolling in. If they were truly committed to democracy, CEOs would permanently cease corporate donations to all candidates, close their political action committees, stop giving to secretive dark money groups, and discourage donations by their executives. And they would throw their weight behind the For the People Act, the first bills of the new Congress offering public financing of elections, among other reforms. Don't hold your breath. The fourth branch is already amassing a war chest to stop Joe Biden and the Democrats from raising corporate taxes, increasing the minimum wage, breaking up big tech, and strengthening labor unions. Make no mistake, these CEOs and their corporations don't actually care about protecting democracy. They care only about protecting their bottom line. So saith Robert Reich at his robertreich.org website. A war chest to stop Joe Biden from raising corporate taxes. Do you realize corporate taxes have been cut almost in half since Trump? I think they're down around 21 or 22% now. The person that lives next door to you, pay more in taxes than that. I mean, if you're not cheating. 22%. Are you fucking kidding me? And increasing the minimum wage. That's one thing that the capitalists have just gone berserk about. Ever since this country got started with enslaved people, because that was the perfect situation for capitalism. Don't pay the fucking workers. I mean, that's one of our big expenses, paying these slob son of a bitches to do the shit work, to do the dangerous work, to fall into vats of acid, to be gobbled up by a butchering machine. Fuck them. To pick the cotton and hand the tobacco and do all this nasty shit that you and I would never do. We are the masters of the universe. We are the capitalists. We determine what is reality and what is communist bullshit. And a livable wage is just that, communist bullshit. Oh, and strengthening labor unions? Strengthening labor unions? The one force against us that has any power at all? Labor unions? Making that? What? Destroy those motherfuckers. Burn them to the ground. Eviscerate them. Gut them. Labor unions. Oh, yeah. Those organizations where these stinking goddamn should-be enslaved people get together and demand what? Increasing the minimum wage? Safety in the workplace? Health insurance, since we stopped the government from issuing health insurance. This is the madness that we deal with, Truth Seeker. And most of us are so fucking asleep. We just walk through this shit, never paying attention to why we can't seem to get ahead of the game. Why we can't seem to rid ourselves of that uneasy feeling of anxiety and or depression, or we can't sleep at night, or we can't stay awake during the day, or we're worried about our kids, or we're worried about ourselves. This is fucking it. Stay asleep. Suck down which one? The blue pill? Pay no attention to the matrix. Just keep fucking moving from cradle to your goddamn urn or your coffin. In the meantime, I will exploit the fuck out of you because I am capitalism. I will take everything from you, and when there's nothing left, I'll try to sell your goddamn bones. Why do we keep doing this? Why? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com. And never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.